Let me tell you something that might be a bit frustrating. Humanity has been on Earth for over 300,000 years. We've gone through industrial revolutions, created colossal structures, skyscrapers, and roads stretching for millions of kilometers. All of these monuments make it seem like we've left a mark on eternity, right? I mean, even if we were to vanish millions of years from now, the universe will always remember us. Our scientific progress and literature can be seen as a different kind of immortality. But here's the frustrating part. If humanity were wiped off the face of the Earth today, millions of years later, if civilization were to be reborn somewhere, and it looked around, it wouldn't find even the slightest trace of us. No giant monuments, no towering skyscrapers, and none of our industrial masterpieces would remain. All of that would be long gone. It's a bit demoralizing, isn't it? But this knowledge, however, leads us to a very interesting question. If this is the case, could it be that we're not the first civilization to exist? Were there other advanced, industrialized, and technologically sophisticated civilizations before us? Are we living in the graveyard of civilizations that once ruled the Earth, built monumental structures, and then disappeared with everything they created? Interesting question, right? A bit eerie, too. Let's explore the possibilities. This is a topic that many people have thought about, and even a subject of countless theories. It has been addressed in fantasy literature multiple times, and some claims even suggest that these ancient civilizations didn't actually vanish, but passed certain thresholds and are now among us living as famous figures. But that's not our focus. We're going to go through a work that has formulated this question beautifully. In 2018, a paper was published by Adam Frank, a physicist and astronomer, and Gavin Schmidt, a climate scientist who worked at NASA. The hypothesis they proposed is called the Silurian Hypothesis. The name Silurian has already caught the attention of Doctor Who fans. As in the series, the Silurians are a species that had been in deep slumber for 400 million years, only to be awakened by a nuclear test. Frank and Schmidt's argument, in essence, presents a thought experiment about the possibility of other civilizations that might have existed before us. Now, let's make something clear. Both Frank and Schmidt personally don't believe that other civilizations existed, but they use scientific reasoning to formulate this thought experiment, and they raise some thought-provoking arguments. The real question isn't whether human-like species existed before us and went extinct, but whether there were other, perhaps even more advanced, industrial civilizations. So first, we must accept this. Yes, humanity has an ancient history going back 300,000 years, but it's only very recently that we've started leaving our marks on Earth building cities, industrializing, and developing technology. Our civilization is still very young in comparison to the Earth's 4.5 billion year history. Even if an incredibly advanced civilization existed at some point during this vast history, if it somehow perished, finding traces of it would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. The reason for this lies in the nature of our planet. Earth may seem stable to us, but if we could fast forward through its 4.5 billion year history, we would see a planet behaving like a vibrant, ever-changing organism. Continents, mountains, and oceans are constantly shifting. Today's mountains were once beneath the oceans, and the Earth's crust, which we walk on today, has been almost entirely recycled in the last few million years. This cycle typically resets every half-billion years. This cycle has a consequence. Most of the Earth's surface we walk on today is no older than 2.6 million years. Yes, we found fossils from hundreds of millions of years ago, but this is an incredibly rare occurrence. Fossilization requires very specific conditions, and it's almost never a given. A fossilized trace of a past civilization is unlikely to survive the billions of years of natural processes. But even if we did manage to uncover something, it's very possible that these traces would be erased, buried, or transformed by the Earth's geological cycles. Now, there's something important to note here. The majority of the world's population lives in cities, but those cities take up only a small fraction of the Earth's surface. For instance, If we were looking for any remnants of a civilization, whether ancient or modern, in the rocks and stones of the Earth, the chances would be very low. This is because fossilization is an incredibly rare event. It requires very specific conditions, such as the right pressure, minimal oxygen, and the right chemical processes. This is why we've only been able to find the fossils of a few species that once dominated the Earth millions of years ago. If, however, there were civilizations that existed before ours, any remnants would most likely be buried deep in the layers of the Earth's crust. Geologists might someday find fossilized evidence, but it would likely be deeply buried and harder to detect. So even if there were ancient civilizations before us, the likelihood of finding them is extremely low. But there's still a possibility that we could find traces in the Earth's rocks. So, if humanity were wiped out and future civilizations studied the Earth's layers millions of years later, they might find traces of us in the form of a 300-centimeter thick layer of rock. All of our history, all of our monuments, our cities, everything we built could be compressed into a tiny layer of rock that future explorers could discover. When we look for traces of ancient civilizations, especially after industrialization, the challenge becomes even greater. Our modern world, the one we built through the Industrial Revolution, might not even leave a mark that future civilizations can easily detect. That's because fossilization is so rare, and it requires very specific conditions. However, if there were such traces, they might appear in the rocks as evidence of the changes in the atmosphere or the oceans, particularly from the burning of fossil fuels. A significant rise in carbon emissions during the industrial era could leave traces in the rock layers, which future scientists might be able to detect. For example, about 56 million years ago, geologists discovered a strange fluctuation in the carbon levels in the rock layers. This period, known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, lasted around 200,000 years and was marked by an extraordinary rise in temperature and carbon emissions. Although we can't definitively say this was due to an advanced civilization, it's an interesting anomaly. It's possible that an ancient civilization, much like ours, could have caused a similar spike in carbon emissions. But this could also be attributed to other natural causes, such as volcanic activity or an asteroid impact. Regardless, it's a curious event that could be a clue for the future. More importantly, this knowledge reminds us of the fragility of our own existence. We may think of ourselves as the rulers of this planet, but in the grand scheme of things, we could one day be reduced to a mere layer of rock. We may think of ourselves as the rulers of this planet, but in the grand scheme of things, we could one day be reduced to a mere layer of rock. So, even though the creators of the Silurian Hypothesis may not believe in the existence of other ancient civilizations, it's still a fascinating idea to ponder. And as always, thank you for being here. See you next time.